The new era of Formula One was meant to bring more spectacular cars, better racing, and a closer championship battle. Whether it's managed those three is debatable, but what certainly isn't debatable is the new cars have brought along something known as porpoising, and it's not going away anytime soon. As we saw at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix with its high-speed nature and bumpiness, if anything, it seems to be getting worse. But what can the teams do to solve this? My name is Luke Etheridge, and in this video I'll be looking at what causes porpoising, why some teams are affected more than others, and what the teams could do to solve it, including a couple of lessons from the past. Now, if you enjoy this video, please leave a like and subscribe to see more of my content, but for now, we're going to go through a quick run through of what causes porpoising. Now, for the first time since the 1980s, ground effect is playing a really crucial part in generating downforce in Formula One. We still saw floors be a major development area over the last few years, but they more looked at the wings, the diffusers, and more visible parts of the bodywork. However, this generates quite a lot of drag and quite a lot of dirty air, which is what made it difficult to follow other cars, and why the battling wasn't exactly the best. By using the ground effect, shaping the floor of the car to effectively suck the car down to the ground, you get less of this dirty air, and therefore you should get better racing. As always, you get more downforce at higher speeds, but this year, because ground effect is so crucial, you get a lot more downforce when you run closer to the ground. So your F1 car comes along at a higher speed and starts generating downforce with the ground effect, and gets sucked to the ground slightly. You're now running a bit closer, you get more downforce, you get sucked to the ground even more. You're running closer, and so on and so forth until you get so close to the ground that the car stalls and loses all of its downforce. All of a sudden, it springs back up again, you're generating downforce, and you're going to start getting sucked to the ground, and so on, and this just repeats constantly, at a high frequency, and that is porpoising. All the teams have suffered at some point this season with it, and they've all tried something different to get around. But as we saw at Baku, Mercedes are the team that has definitely struggled the most. Why is this the case though? Zero side pods. It was something different. It was something we all thought could make it a dominant car. Normally in Formula One, if you're the only team doing something, it's because it's ingenious or insane. Now, all of Mercedes' data, including some from other teams, suggests that this concept is the fastest, if you get it in its performance window. And that window is so small, so tiny, you need to be a professional Where's Wally player to find it. With no side pods, the floor is a lot more exposed and a lot less supported, giving that opportunity for more flex in the floor. So not only are they suffering from this porpoising as the car runs closer to the ground, because it's also flexing as well, we're seeing it happen at a higher frequency, which looks a lot more uncomfortable and is clearly undesirable. You might remember back to Melbourne where Mercedes ran a floor sensor on Lewis's car to try and understand what was causing it, and in Baku, Hamilton had an experimental floor on his W13. However, this seemed to perform a lot worse than George's, so Mercedes aren't really much closer to finding the solution. But what would be an easy solution for all of the teams? One simple solution would be to run the car higher, and we've seen Haas do this at a couple of races. We've also seen Haas's performance fall off a cliff. They were near the top of the midfield in Bahrain, they were absolutely nowhere in Baku. And that's because as soon as you run the car higher, you're getting a lot less downforce from the floor, so you're having to put bigger wings on, which increases the drag, which doubles the effect as your car is running higher off the ground. So teams really don't want to do this, unless it's a last resort. You could also stiffen the floor by adding additional supports, or making that floor just a bit more thicker. However, this adds weight to the car, and as we've heard right from the start of testing, the teams are close, if not over, the weight limit. Maybe as more developmental parts come in, maybe as these parts get lighter, the teams might have more leeway for this option. Another solution which would work, but you certainly won't see any teams doing, is stiffening the suspension. This will make the car more resistant to the aerodynamic loads. It would also kill the driver's back every time they went over a curb, a bump, or probably even an ant in the middle of the circuit. These are already the stiffest Formula One cars in history. I can't see this being an option for anyone. It would solve one problem, it would create quite another. There are two options from Formula One's past that could work. Both are currently illegal. In the 90s, active suspension was used on Formula 1 cars until it was outlawed in 1994, and the all-conquering Williams team used this to great effect. It made the car easier to handle on the corners, and you could also lower it down the straights to create less drag. This could now be used to artificially keep the car at a constant ride height, therefore reducing or possibly even eliminating this porpoising effect. Creating an active suspension system, however, would be very expensive at the moment, and I can't see it happening in the budget cap era. An even more radical idea has already been used on a ground effect Formula 1 car, but never actually got raced. What if we put a chassis inside another chassis? This was the thinking behind the Lotus 88 created by Colin Chapman and his team for the 1982 season. Ground effect was at its peak then, and teams were trying to find new clever ways around the regulations. The whole point of this was to maximise the downforce created by the Lotus, but minimise the force transmitted to the driver. This was done by making the outside chassis, which generated all the downforce, separate to the inside chassis, which was independently sprung, and this was where the driver sat. Think of it as a more complicated system to what lorry drivers have at the moment, where their seat has some suspension in to keep them comfortable on long journeys. As with all brilliant F1 ideas though, the other teams quickly protested, said this was an illegal device, and the FIA agreed. The Lotus 88 never made it past a practice session. As the main concern at the moment is driver safety, I think any change is going to have to come from the drivers and be led by them. We want Formula 1 to be a tough sport. We want the drivers to come out of the car looking like it has been difficult. We don't want them coming out, though, looking like they're in severe pain, looking almost crippled. We certainly don't want to see any long-term effects to the spine and the nervous system. Some people have talked about making a minimum ride height that all the teams have to follow. However, this would need 8 out of the 10 teams to agree, and seeing as Red Bull haven't got any problems with porpoising, I don't think they'd vote for it. And I don't think AlphaTauri would either, so that idea is out the window. Some have even mooted a maximum G-force that the drivers are able to suffer from vertically, and this might be the best stopgap solution. It wouldn't punish those teams that have got porpoising under control, and would force the teams where it is really affecting them and affecting the drivers to do something different. However, I wouldn't be surprised that if this does come in for 2023, we'd see something a bit more permanent. So, that was my rundown of porpoising, why it happens, why some teams suffer more than others, and what could be done to stop it happening in the future, and why we might need to look back at the past for that to happen. Thanks so much everyone for watching this video. Leave a comment down below on which solution you think would be the best, or any others that I haven't mentioned that you would like to see, and we will see you next time around. Goodbye.